You're alive.
All right.
I found it.
All right, we're going to reconvene and try this again. I will say we are now live on YouTube. There was no countdown. This is very courageous. I've never done a live YouTube, but here we are. So you can't see everyone, but I will pan. I'll be multi-talented today. So thank you, Ms. Thorne, for reminding me that it's important that we stream for our community members. I will start back over to say thank you again and welcome to our joint collaborative meeting between the Athens Clark County Mayor and Commission and the Clark County School District Board of Education. Again, very excited about the topics we'll discuss today around youth development. We are going to begin this evening with introductions. And so is there anyone who wants to go first? You're just going to say your name, who you represent, and then one thing that excites you when you think about youth in Athens or the opportunities. Oh, I thought it was already saying.
Lawrence, I'll start, and maybe we just go around for the convenience of the YouTubers. So I'm Kelly Gertz, Mayor of the Unified Government of Athens Clark County, and among the things I'm consistently excited about are just the depth of concern for young people in this community. Seems like everywhere you turn, somebody is deeply involved in, or in some cases, initiating good work with our kids.
Thank you. You want to continue around your table of friends?
Should I go next?
Absolutely.
Okay, Mundy Anderson, CCSD, the Board of Education member, District 6. One thing I'm excited about and probably also fearful of is trying to break the cycles of generational poverty here in Athens with our children. And so I'm excited to possibly see us go towards eliminating some of those barriers. And I see a big one is education. But I'm also really fearful that we've been doing this for decades and decades, and we're still quite not getting it right. So hopefully we'll officially start to get it right.
Thank you.
I'll go around this way. Allison Wright, I'm District 4 on the commission. And what I'm excited about, especially in this group, is we don't have to convince people that we need to do something to engage the youth. And I look forward to us doing new things so that we're not doing the same thing and getting the same response.
Hey, Lawrence, thank you. I'm Mike Canby. I'm on the Athens Clark County Commission as well. And I think, one of the things that younger folks here in Athens inspire about me, or for me, is their ability to embrace their passion. And you see that all throughout, whether it be in art or journalism. I mean, the journalism folks over at Cedar Shoals, what they put together. I know each year we have a book that the Linden House gives us about just different art pieces that are developed by the students of Clark County, and it's just amazing to flip through. I've been starting to try to paint a little bit myself, so I'm drawing inspiration from them, and they're really good. But the way kids here in town embrace their passion and try to use that passion to help them, decide what they want to do for their lives. I think it's important, and I'm hoping the county on our side could help them do that.
Jesse Houle, on the commission in District 6, which, however it looks in a week or two, is still the west side in some fashion. What I wrote down here was, I'm excited about the youth themselves, which has some echoes of what y'all were saying, but specifically having younger folks involved in the decision-making that affects their own lives. So as we're talking about building out different structures that they're involved. And we're going to talk a lot about ARPA, so I'll also just throw out there that I'm excited we have many millions of dollars to do something very different with than we usually can.
Thank you. We'll move over to the centerpiece. That's yours.
I'm Melissa Link. I'm on the commission for District 3, which kind of sort of probably won't exist in a couple weeks. I live in Boulevard, not too far from Sarah. She's in my district, but won't be if the districts go through. I am excited about the diversity in this community and the idea that our children should be encouraged to celebrate that diversity. I think that's like the real hope for the future of our nation and society and the world, is for people to learn to accept one another for all their differences and live peaceably together.
I'm Kara Dykeman. I am on the school board for District 5, and what excites me about what we're talking about tonight is thinking about all the different ways that children can get involved in lots of different things, be it athletics or just being outside or art or music, or finding ways that we can make sure that all the children are able to find things that they're interested in, or even just discover things that maybe they never knew about before. So that's
Hello, Tawana Maddox, school board member, District 9, and I'm most excited about the possibilities for our young people to have opportunities and exposure that will help them to grow into being, better citizens, better entrepreneurs, or better whatever it is that they imagine themselves being.
Hi, I'm Ovita Thornton, District 9, Clark County School District. So, no, wait a minute. I was trying to say I used to be on the Clark County School Board, but now I am a commissioner. And my vision when I was on the school board is to teach our young people how to become millionaires and not just work for somebody else and make them millionaires. I think that they have the skills, the opportunities, and I think we limit them from thinking even higher than what they could be. So that's a bit exaggerated, but I know there's so many great people doing work with our youth in the community, and they give so much time and so much energy. I am just hoping and looking forward to a time where, and they give back. That's the other thing I gotta say about our volunteers in the community. But we want our youth to strive for the highest, not just a job, but being the owner, the director, the CEO, and raise that bar even higher. And I believe they can do it if given the opportunity.
Thank you.
Greg Davis, District 1 School Board, and I'm going to be very provincial. Y'all looking at the big picture, and I'm so proud of you. I'm looking at the east side. I'm looking forward to the Lexington corridor being pedestrian friendly and having resources for our families on the east side. I'm looking for our 3 elementary schools on the east side getting public transportation right to the school. I'm looking for housing developments that include more than just students, and instead of a few here and a few there. Looking forward to that because we're building on the east side. Early learning, I'm very happy about that being on the east side. I don't know how long it will be on the east side, but that's a big step forward. And I am particularly looking forward to a public library on the east side.
That deserves applause. I'm Tim Denson, District 5 Commissioner for Athens, Clark County. And what excites me is the youth themselves, that they are, I think it's been spoken a little bit already, but they are capable and they're actually have the best understanding of what they need. Yeah. And so we need to be using them as an asset and to help us guide us to get the resources to where they need them. But we have the people who know what's needed, and I think we just need to listen.
I'm Carol Myers, District 8 on the east side, and in the bigger sphere, I'm really excited that we're all here together, working together, and about all the groups and individuals and in the neighborhoods, on the street, working with youth. There's just so many people I've met in the last year, and excited about the opportunity to bring other people like my former employer, Athens Tech, in here and pulling us all together to work together. And locally and specifically, I am thrilled about the opportunities on the east side. And I'm like praying every night that the Clark County united government can work with the school district in helping to facilitate a walkable, easily accessible East Side Library. So that's what I'm excited about.
Thank you.
I'm Nicole Hull. I'm a school board member for District 8, and I'm very excited about the opportunity to make sure that all of the kids are represented. I think historically, it's been easier to represent certain groups, and so I'm really happy to be in a group of people where we can really look at making sure that all of our kids have the resources that they need to succeed, to be exposed, so they can be their best selves.
Okay.
So I'm Karina, and I'm on the school board for District 2. And I am excited that there have already been enough studies and research and surveys completed that we have enough data to take action on things that children have been asking for years, to ensure that they have a great future with the focus on equity, literacy, and eradicating youth violence.
So I am Linda Davis. I am representing District 3, which I can't imagine if the map goes through, I'll be in 4 different commission districts. Okay, I think just pick the way it's long. But anyway, I'm hoping that for my interest in energy has not changed since I joined the school board in June of 2012, and that is to have equity for our children so that every child reaches their maximum potential. I have been working on that consistently and steadily, and I'm very excited. There are a lot of opportunities coming toward us where we have some people who aren't afraid to go into places that most of us wouldn't dare tread into, to go get to know the kids, get to know what the problems are and what the issues are. I am praying that out of this school year and out of this collaboration, we can truly focus on what is important here, and that we can literally start educating all of our children. That is so critical. I think if we get that right, the rest of the stuff takes care of itself.
Last but not least.
I'm Lakeisha. I represent District 7. I don't know why I always want to say 9. District 7. I guess the thing I'm most excited about or would like to see is, I think, similar to what's been said already, but being sure that we include families and children in like the decision making. As far as like what we are going to decide to do, how we allocate resources. My experience with children and families is that they will tell you, what they want and what they feel that their children need. And so I think a lot of the work for us is trusting and sharing and empowering those communities. Kids are always excited to tell you what they want and what they need. I'm looking forward to hopefully more mental health resources and more educational resources actually in communities. And so I think there's a perception out there that we have to bring children to us. And that in part is true, but we also have to be a part of the communities they are a part of. And so I'm sort of excited, I think, about this collaboration because hopefully it will result at some point in us actually physically and literally meeting, our families where they are.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks for all of you all for that. I think, and I won't share, I'm not part of the commission or on the Board of Education, but I think I'm inspired to hear that we have elected officials who all believe that we can do this because we can. And I think there's power in us collaborating and working together. So thank you all for being here tonight. You could have not came, you could have said I had something else to do, but just even showing up today shows that you care and you're willing to do the work and do what it takes to make things happen for our youth. So thank you. I'm going to now turn it over and introduce Mayor Gertz and I believe City Manager Williams to talk about the American Rescue Plan, giving us some updates around ACC ARRA activity. And then after that, I will bring up Ms. Washington and Mr. Gaskins to talk about it from the CCSD perspective.
All right. Thank you, Laura. It's good to see everybody. I'll give you a couple of snapshots. First, I'll start very high level with what the federal government's marching orders were to cities and counties with American Rescue Plan Act dollars. I'll talk a little bit about what we've done so far, and then I'll talk a little bit prospectively about what we might be doing in the years ahead. So we received, because we're a unified government, about $58 million of American Rescue Plan Act dollars allocated to cities and to counties. And then we've received a couple of separate pots that are very topic specific. So we received about $2.5 million of housing and homelessness money, and then about another $7 million of public transit money that are separate from the general city-county money. Thus far, we've spent some money on support of our own employees. We've spent some money in a category that's called revenue replacement, which basically means you can translate ARPA dollars to those lost pennies that you otherwise would have received had we not had the pandemic. And so we've used some funds to do things like begin an alternative response team and to provide some youth support services and a few other things already. Looking forward, we've got somewhere in the range of $35 million left to spend. And in our discussions internally, what we've really looked at are a handful of categories where there's consistent community need. And with all of these categories, we want to make the biggest dent we possibly can for the community, and we want to think long-term. And fortunately, unlike with some other federal funds that we've received, we've got a little while. So the federal government has said that American Rescue Plan Act dollars have to be allocated by the end of 2024, and then have to be spent by the end of 2026. And so we're looking at somewhere, what I'm recommending is somewhere in the ballpark of $11 million for affordable housing needs, somewhere around $7 million of youth support needs, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the program, somewhere between $3 and $5 million each of behavioral health supports and homeless supports. And then, given that we've got some years to spend these funds, leaving some money in the bank, because one of the things that happens is you get into any of these programs and you just have your experience being a community leader and supporter, and you realize sometimes months or years in, you need a little bit more money or there's some other priority. So we're planning on leaving a few $1 million untouched. In terms of process, we have this as an agenda item for our voting meeting tomorrow, but we've been very busy preparing T-SPLOST, so we're not going to vote on our ARPA allocation tomorrow. The anticipation is that we'll vote 2 weeks from tomorrow. So that's the high-level ARPA overview. So any ARPA questions? And then I have one other thing to note. All right. The other thing, and this comes back to a prior collaboration between the unified government and the school district, is the school district had determined that they wanted to be part of one of our tax allocation district zones. And the school board decided that the one that made the most sense was the mall. The mall has been, of course, a depreciating property. It's been losing value. So I think wisely, if the school board was going to imagine one to be a partner in, that one makes sense because it's been a sinking ship, for lack of a better phrase. Well, it now looks like that sinking ship may have its pumps working and maybe get afloat again. So you might have heard that there has been a proposal to redevelop the 75-acre mall property as a mixed use and mixed income environment. So one of the things that will be necessary is that we put into place that collaborative structure between school board members and county commissioners. That's one of the layers of review of the eventual use of those tax allocation district dollars. So we'll get some more formal information to you in the next couple of weeks, but I just wanted to put a note in your ears that that is coming real soon down the way. Any questions about that?
We're just excited.
Yes.
I had heard that.
Yeah, no, and Greg, funny story. I think when we decided on this collaboration, I think one of the school districts must-haves, if we were going to collaborate on this one, is that there be at least $5 million of new investment over the next 5 years. And at least right now, we're looking about $400 million of new investment over the next 5 years. So something in that ballpark.
Just real quick on that, it is a massive development, and their first hearing with the planning commission is this Thursday. So if anybody here is interested in that, without belaboring it here, a great forum to share your thoughts, or at least to listen, would be this Thursday at 6 p.m. at the planning commission, which is on Doherty Street.
And you can watch that on YouTube as well.
But it is live as well.
It's live. You can public comment live in person, or watch it live or after.
Thanks, Al.
Mayor, if I might.
Oh, please do, Dwayne.
So just from a decision-making standpoint, the Mayor pointed out on February 15th, we hope that the Mayor Commission will allocate some general dollars towards these purposes. And the point is to work with stakeholders in the community to find out what the priorities are. These are big systemic issues that this community's wrestled with for a long time. Homelessness, affordable housing, mental health, workforce development, youth development. With respect to homelessness, in the resolution the commission passed last year, there was funds set aside for a planning effort to engage the stakeholders, the homeless service providers, the homeless shelter providers, people in the community, anybody that's interested in this, wants to offer some potential solutions, bring a facilitator in, come up with a defined list of prioritized recommendations of things that need to be done, irrespective of funding source. Don't just tailor it for the small amount of money in the big scheme of things that we have now, but what needs to be done. Ultimately, the commission will decide how those funds are spent. But it could be that this group comes back and says, well, we need more of this. And we have a process to find out what providers are interested in that. It'll be transparent. People will know what's going on. Similarly with affordable housing, Assistant Manager Jones is working with our GIT group, our Georgia Initiative for Community Housing. And if the commission agrees, that would be sort of a steering group that would engage the community to find out what interventions could we potentially invest in. In fact, it's a housing investment strategy. And so in those ways, we want to thought, because y'all heard this too from the citizens and the residents, y'all have already figured out what to do with the money, right? So we're trying to do this methodically and slowly and kind of bring people in slowly to where we're headed and what we're trying to do. And we need to listen to the residents on some of the potential ideas out there.
Back to me.
I have a question,
Go for it.
but it's not about ARRA money. But the county does have youth development money in the different pots, though, right?
Yes,
And is the county currently using that fund?
yes. So that's for some enhanced programming at what was formerly East Athens Community Center and Lay.
And how much was that?
About $500,000 or 400,000. ballpark.
Rita, they're working on the teen centers over there and adding some, some programming and some physical space and some computers and TVs and things like that as well. But, we're interested in this conversation to see where it goes beyond our money.
And so, and that you mentioned that, and I know that we have kicked off Grand Slam, which was led by Karina. So where is that in the mix of everything? Or does that have to be re-brought back up?
I think the way our budget falls, that half of it's been funded for this year, right? And so I think that's what we did last year. So I think it's still on course.
So are we just, is that being ran strictly through leisure services?
At this point, that's where the funds are budgeted, yes.
Thank you.
Maybe just to share some insight on how we got there. So the budget on the county level goes through multiple stages. It comes to the manager's office, goes to the mayor, and then ultimately the commission can alter it. There were some notable commission alterations in the last budget cycle, and one of them was to inject that about 400,000 into the budget for youth development programming. Unlike most other things that were injected into the budget, it wasn't specified much beyond that. This isn't the first time that money gets put in generally and then it sort of sits. And I think what was good about what staff did was instead of just letting it sit, they acted on it in what they thought made sense. But what that's, I think, signaled to all of us, and an important thing for us to remember here in this room, especially with our budget cycle coming up again, is if we want to see something happen more specifically, or for that kind of investment in the future to happen in a specific kind of way, then we need to be working on that kind of now at this time of year, so that come May, or ideally before May, when it goes through the manager's department, and and the mayor's office, that's being whittled into something more specific. I hope that's going to be helpful because we've done a lot of discussing in these meetings before now about how we had put that money in, and I think even among the commission, we had different ideas about where that may go. We've gotten clarity on what's been happening with it, but it's also revealed that if we want to do anything different or in addition to that moving forward, we're going to have to specify them. That's helpful.
I have one question. Blaine, this has to do with when you stated the Georgia Initiative Community Housing Committee. Who is that? How is that committee made up?
So the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing is a program administered by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs.
Okay.
And it's built so that cities around Georgia can get stakeholders in the community to go through sort of a curricula to learn about affordable housing. They have retreats and they go to different towns and they look at how things are done. And here locally, Housing Authority Department is on there, Land Trust, so, some of our affordable housing providers are on there. I think Carol Williams, a realtor, is on there. I can get you the list of folks on there, but they've been working at this about 3 or 4 years now. And they started, looking at different ways that we could increase affordable housing. So this is really, they don't make the final decision. They've just been, their head's been there for a while. And so they can, we look for them to engage the public and then come back to the commission with some very specific recommendations on how to spend those funds.
So they will be coming back to the public and on grassroots level so that some of us can be engaged and understand what they've learned.
Yes, I hope so. I hope that's the direction that the commission would like to go in, that we do have, as the mayor said, we've got a little bit of time. I know people are like, look, clock's ticking, we gotta go. But we need to make a decision that everybody understands what's happening and feels like, they've had some input. I really thought that y'all's town hall that you had about the crisis in Black education, the use of the thought exchange module, that was really good. So things like that, letting people know what's going on, hearing some folks, and then having some strategic discussions about what's next.
And we also have commissioners that are on that committee.
That's right. Sorry, Commissioner Denson, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Blaine, I just wanted to ask you, there was a workforce housing study that was done 6 or 7 years ago. Is this the outgrowth of that, or is that just was filed away and then we moved on to something else?
That's still there as a good reference. That was a little more narrow. And if you think about it, there's some overlap between homelessness and affordable housing. If we talk about how do we move people through homelessness, y'all, there is no capacity in our emergency shelters, in our transitional housing, in our permanent supportive housing. It's full, So there's definitely a capacity issue as those two intersect. So it's more than just workforce housing. Workforce housing is important, but there's got to be, some segue between what's going on with affordable housing for all.
And that was part of what GIG digested is exactly that study, Greg, to determine the direction that it's presented thus far. And of course, thus far, it hasn't had specific new dollars attached to it. So we're going to revisit some of those questions.
They have some great ideas in that. I mean, I was very impressed with that.
We do have the GIG report, which you digest that plus many other things. They actually put out a report, a list of recommendations. So I can put it on there. I can email it to everybody since there's some interest that everybody has.
Are those GIG meetings open to the public, or how's that work?
Yeah, I mean, anybody could come. I mean, they're held at the Housing Authority, and I think, like Blaine said, I mean, there's 20 people maybe on there. Advanced behavioral health. There's like 20 different organizations that are represented on there.
Is it a diverse group, or is it a diverse group, or is it all white people?
It is a diverse group, and I think with everything, we'd definitely be increasing our diversity. Yeah. But also, I'd say, like, since they made the recommendations out,
Thank you, Handy. It was a good question.
it doesn't meet that often right now because there's not a task actually assigned to it. Although I guess if this moves forward, there will be a task assigned to it.
And it was initially appointed under Mayor Jensen, by the way.
So it's it was an appointed group?
Yeah, Mayor Denson appointed it, so there are a lot of members on it that are carryovers from Mayor Denson's appointment.
But the organizations are appointed, if I'm remembering that correctly, the organization appoints.
Yeah, there's
people.
some organizations that do, but some more specific people.
And, I guess what people are trying to figure out is what's out there, and, GIC is not a new thing, I participated with the Wadley group. So it is statewide, and the resources is humongous. So if we're having problems, there are resources, and like I said, now, Tim is on there, the mayor's on there, and this should be in our bag of resources.
It actually made me and some of the resources you discuss in your breakout groups. So I'm gonna bring us to our next part of the agenda just for a quick update because you all need to be armed with information to make decisions and to make recommendations. So I'm gonna bring forward Ms. Jamie Washington, I believe Mr. Gaskins as well, and then Dr. Gant, or
I'll defer to Jamie, if there's any questions, I will jump in and answer that.
did you?
Yeah, I don't have much, so.
Okay, well, Dr. Gant will come up and do a quick brief. You don't need to come up.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I don't have any updates. It was really, just an update. I thought on notifying you on how the changes we've had made with our committee. So I do want to thank the Government Relations Committee. I know Greg has done a lot of work to get us together. And so want to reassure you that we are, still prioritizing issues related to our governance and issues that come before us related to state bills and things like that. We don't have the Government Relations Committee anymore, but we will be relying on individuals who have knowledge of the work that committee has done to be sure that we prioritize our meetings together. The only second thing I was going to add was just an update with the applications for funding for youth development in Clark County. And I think Ms. Washington is going to be giving an update on that, I think. So that's pretty much it that I can think of. But I'll defer to my board colleagues as well to see if there are any updates that I'm missing.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Is it okay if I stay back here?
Absolutely.
Come through. So I'm Jamie Washington, I'm the coordinator of federal programs in Clark County. And I'm working with the CCSD Connect. And that's an initiative, it's community collaboration for a better Athens. We've allocated $1.3 million, up to $1.3 million for the community to collaborate with us. We put out a funding application workshop where we walked through organizations within the community that could come in, talk to us, and ask questions and say, we're interested in bringing programming into the school district. And so on February 3rd, we'll put out a request for funding application, and that will go live February 3rd, where they'll be able to fill out their full application. Really what we're trying to do is re-engage the community with our youth in Athens. We want our students to have high quality, effective programming that are going to meet Clark County School District strategic priorities. We've got 5 strategic priorities, as well as the GDO, Georgia Department of Education. There are 3 ARPA funding priorities, and I'll tell you what those are. The GDO priorities, priority 1 is accelerating learning. We know that COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our students' learning. We all know where our scores are. Everybody sitting in this room has seen CCSD scores. So we want to bring in programming that will help accelerate our students' learning. Priority number 2 is personalizing supports. So we want to have supports, as Dr. Gant said, mental health supports that are going to support not only our students, but our staff as well. Everybody's been affected in ways that we can't imagine by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we want to invite community collaborators in that can help us with those supports. And then promoting opportunities. Sorry, it is hard to breathe in 2 masks. So we want to preserve and promote access to opportunities. Now, in order for an organization to do this, they have to meet one of Godot's strategic priorities that I just listed. They also have to meet one of CCSD's strategic priorities, either student achievement, community collaboration, climate and culture, human and capital development, or financial and operational effectiveness. So those three things they have to meet, those two, the Godot strategic priorities and CCSD. And then the last thing they have to meet is they have to meet our maintenance of equity. And so that's our top 6 schools that are either, oh gosh, I gotta take a deep breath. Alps Road, Cleveland Road, J.J. Harris, Classic City High School, and Howard B. Stroud. Those are our top 6 schools for maintenance of equity. So they have to bring in services or programming to one of those schools to ensure that we're meeting that equity like Ms. Hall said. So that's basically kind of the rundown of our program. We hope that we'll be able to start distributing these funds starting in March. We just have to go through the full request for funding process, and that starts February 3rd. Questions will be opened up. They'll have a week to do that. Then all applications have to be submitted by February 18th. We'll have committees that will review these applications, and after that, they'll be notified, and then hopefully we get this programs into the schools. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, this sounds wonderful. One thing that, so they're connected to 3 schools. They're all elementary schools?
No, we have 6 schools.
Classic, and then Alps, the 2 I got. What are the other 4?
Howard B. Stroud, Gaines, Cleveland Road, and J.J. Harris.
Alps.
So is there any, for this programming, would it include, or could it include athletics?
Yes, they could, as long as it's meeting our strategic priorities. If they said they're coming in, bringing in athletic program that's going to promote student achievement, because in order to participate, you have to bring this grade up, or somehow tying it into their achievements, somehow tying it into our strategic priorities, as well as Godot's use of ARPA funding.
Can you repeat CCSD's priorities?
Yes, absolutely. Student achievement, that's preparing every student for college and career success. That's priority number 1. Priority number 2, community collaboration, engaging families, community members, and civic organizations as active partners. Priority 3, climate and culture, providing a welcoming environment and positive school and district culture for students, families, and employees. Priority 4, human and capital development, recruit, develop, and retain effective teachers, leaders, and staff who meet the diverse needs of our students. And priority 5, financial and operational effectiveness, managing and protect public funds and assets through efficient and effective use of available resources.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So for the applicants for these funds, do they have to follow within a certain structure? Does it have to be a nonprofit? Can it be a community group? Can it be a club from the University of Georgia? Like, what criteria must the applicant possess?
Yes, so in our request for funding proposal, we don't have it stated that they have to be a nonprofit, but what they have to have, their bare minimum requirements for the people that will be working with our students. They either have to have an associate's degree, 60 hours of 60 credit hours, and or a high school diploma/GED. So we're not cutting this off for someone that didn't necessarily go to college. We want this to really be a community effort.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Is there any stipulation for faith-based groups?
I'll have to get back to you on that. There, as of right now, I do not have anything written in there about that, but I'll double check.
Is it on the website right now? How do people find out?
So the RFP is not on the website right now. That will go live on February 3rd, on Thursday. But when it's live, they can link to it from our COVID-19 information on that top tab, and then scroll down to ESSER, and then that will link them to the RFP, and then also it will be in the regular area where you send the RFPs typically.
And then we'll send out in our weekly blast out that we send to the community every Friday. We'll add that there as well.
Yes, it also will be listed in the flagpole, and some other channels. They want it to be out there for everyone to know about it. Oh. As a teacher, I'm like, hot dog, all these questions. But as a presenter, I'm
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious. So we've been talking a lot about ARPA. I see ARPA on here. I've heard CCSD got an ARPA allocation, but it's not clear to me how much that was or if it was specifically earmarked and how it got to y'all. Could you share with us just from like a dollars and logistics perspective, how much CCSD got and what it can or cannot go to?
So we got about, between the CARES 1 and 2, and then the ARPA, about $75 million allocated to our district. We have, for the most part, already have used our CARES 1 and 2 funding. Most of the funding that we have left, which we will have opportunity to use up to 2024, is our ARPA funding that's left over.
So how much of the 75 was ARPA?
I believe 48. Is that right? I believe 48 million was ARPA.
And are the regulations around how y'all can use it pretty similar to how the part-time unified government can, or is there a separate earmark in terms of like?
So they've changed over time, which we don't like, because they gave us some guidance, and now they are kind of with CARES that we thought that we would mimic with ARPA. That has not been the same. So one of the things that was something that we could use for CARES 1 and 2 was the maintenance of personnel. That is no longer something that we can use with our ARPA funds. But mostly it's around learning loss, it's around PPE. We've used a large portion around summer school, not just for remediation, but also for acceleration of students. And we've used a large portion of it for incentives to get our staff vaccinated, and retention pay for our staff to continue to work with us, even in the pandemic.
And a difference in our guidance is that our grant deadline ends September 30th, 2024. And I've heard everyone say Athens Park is 2026, but 2024 is out.
I think ours is the same for 2024 is when we have to decide what we're going to use it for, but it can be spent out through 2026. So we have how much left?
I'm not sure how
I
much.
can tell you, right there is.
Look at our board. So it looks like we have 24, is that right?
It's right now. There is still, I guess it doesn't subtract it for you, but there was 48.55 million in ARPA, and there's been 7.8 million spent.
What kind of stuff was the CARES money spent on that's already been spent?
So our Georgia Insights website, that's the best place to look to see where all of our funds have gone, and transparency to the core.
Okay.
A large portion was spent on PPE. We also spent a large portion on our retention bonuses, as well as our incentives for vaccinations.
So if we get my math on the fly here right, and I heard Kara right through all of our math, it's about 40.7 remaining. So in the ARPA. So I came here, I guess, imagining that we were going to talk about how we can collaborate to use our ARPA money and CCSD's ARPA money to make something very cool happen. And I'm trying to understand, like, Kelly was talking about how we've got the buckets that we're doing, and there's a bucket that we're going to have for youth development that's a portion of our overall amount. I'm curious if y'all have an idea of how much is in the bucket from CCSD side for this potential collaboration, or is it?
So we haven't determined that yet, but I will say some of the things that we've allocated, we've had a lot of cost savings. And so we have millions of dollars that we thought that we would allocate in staff or we would allocate in summer school that has not been used. So there's an opportunity. I'm meeting with our new executive director of federal programs tomorrow because we need to do a budget amendment for some of the money that we thought that we would allocate. We're not going to need it in that bucket. So we need to allocate it somewhere else. So I think there's an opportunity to do that. And I think also we started off allocating $1.5 million to the program that Ms. Washington just talked about. But if there are more people interested in partnering with our schools, then we can definitely increase that amount. Yes.
So my hand was up a long time.
Oh,
That's my question now. I was trying so hard to be a team player. All right, so seriously, as you wrote this RFP, can you tell me if you guys came up with anybody in mind that you thought could answer this right now and be ready to go March?
Yes.
Did you have some people that you
Yes.
think can do it?
And so in full transparency, if that's okay, I don't know if Mike is listening. In full transparency, we have what Ms. Washington created as an internal process. She worked with community organizations to walk them through the process because we receive feedback that sometimes people have the best ideas, they just don't know how to apply for them.
Right.
So Ms. Washington created a whole process for that. As we were getting ready to approve some of those, our guidance from our contracting office said we need to make sure that this goes through an RFP process. So we have actually, in this first round, partnered or have some potential partnerships with several organizations in the Athens area, specifically in the Athens areas that have nonprofits or have worked in our schools in the past. But we want to make sure that we meet the compliance expectations of the federal government to make sure that we don't get any trouble and we can use the money for our, the 4 years that we have to use it.
So as a follow-up, thank you, that's really good and helpful. My follow-up to that is for those people that would not meet your criteria. And as you identified, like you knew before, right? Can I get access to that information? Because I think that there's an opportunity here to help bring some people along with this process.
And so part of the RFP process is that we do explain to them and share with them their scoring so they have the feedback. And I think because we have probably more money that we will expand in this first round, they will have another opportunity to apply. And then the other part of our process that Ms. Washington has created is that those that do accept, we review them every year. So if they fall short of their expectations to serve our kids and have the increased student outcomes that they identified, then we give them a chance to address that. And if they don't address that, then they can no longer partner with us, and then that funding may be available to another partner.
Sounds like a plan.
Yes.
So I guess I want to piggyback on Commissioner Hill's question just for clarity. It sounds like you already have a plan and it's about to be rolled out, training is left the station. But our purpose here today, you're saying there's still other opportunities that we can put money together to do bigger things or greater things.
All of our money has not been allocated. And some of the things, for example, high school virtual school was one of the things that we put a lot of money into. And then we wrote a grant and now the state is paying for it. So the money that we have allocated for that is now able to be reallocated somewhere else. And we know that out of this process tonight, there are going to be some ideas that materialize, and then we'll go back to our budget to make sure that we can support those things. Yes, sir.
So, wrap my head, we have these two arcane behemoths that are kind of at the table right now, right? The unified government and the school district. And I'm more familiar with the way our arcane behemoth makes decisions and kind of our process, but I'm much less familiar with CCSD. So my math is right. You said 1.5 million is what you're currently talking about for this program?
Currently, we have up to 1.5 million.
So that would leave 39.2 million. So I guess I'm trying to make sense of what the process is that CCSD uses for that remaining 39.2 million. Does the Board of Education decide how that's spent, or is that an administrative decision, or is it a mix of the two? Is there something comparable to the way, like Mayor Gertz said, we're kind of mapping out these buckets that we're gonna put some into? Are y'all doing something similar to that? Like,
No.
No.
This sounds like, I thought that's what this meeting was going to be at the beginning. And so obviously I came with the wrong impression. I thought we would be talking collaboratively about what the needs are in the community. And I know that according to the state, the school's responsibility is K through 12 education. Well, we know that in order to achieve that, it reaches way beyond the doors of our K through 12 thing. So I thought this conversation would be about those kinds of opportunities. But again, that's how then the process is things. So I apologize if I'm wrong.
No, Ms. Davis, you are correct. That's actually what we will, at some point tonight, get to. The last part of it, and I'm not shutting down questions. I see there's some fingers being raised. I just want to say that is the 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, the last hour is to talk through what are the programs, policy, what are the opportunities? And that'll be facilitated by Ms. Emily Boness. So you will lose me as an MC during that time. But again, we could probably take a few more questions and then.
I was just gonna, I was just gonna say sort of quick, so no, I don't think there is a specific amount. And the process, I think, will fall under the normal budgeting process, which means that the staff comes to us with whatever those ideas is. If it's ideas from here, or if it's ideas from outside of this meeting, because we're not the only people, I would hope, that are gonna have ideas. And then from that, then the board determines if they'll take action on those ideas and if they'll approve that. I would imagine if it comes as a budget item or if it comes as something that needs to be spent before then. But I guess to answer your question, I do see it as a bit collaborative. Although we are in the, we're not like boots on the ground necessarily in the communities and asking the questions. I mean, we speak to our constituents and the young people that we're involved with. But I would imagine it would be a collaborative process that follows the budget process that we use already. So our budget cycle that has already started as well. And so I would imagine that whatever comes out of this meeting, after the district, if the district determines that that is something we can move forward in and we give feedback, then we would sort of move accordingly. But to my knowledge, there is no specific amount that we're dealing with, like $2 million or $5 million. We know how much we can't go over, obviously, because it's only 39 point whatever $1 million left.
And we've also already allocated 12 million towards flex position salaries. So minus.
Yeah. So
bring that down.
Am I also hearing you correctly, Lakeisha, that the board is only weighing in on the use of ARPA money insofar as it's part of the budget discussion? You all aren't having like a separate discussion about ARPA money?
Yeah, to my knowledge, I mean, which is a little bit limited these days, we have not. Now, if we have individual ideas, but we have not had like a call meeting of sorts where we discuss specifically, this is the direction that we're going with this particular amount of ARPA money.
It's more subsumed in the bigger budget discussion.
I think we'll have that presentation by staff, right, for our first run, and that's already on the calendar. And it's gonna be what bubbled up from the schools.
All right.
Ms. Washington, what did you say 12 million was allocated for?
So each school received a flex position, which is a certified position to address learning loss. Some of those schools have used their flex position to add additional teachers to lower class size. Some have used it for additional school counselors. Some have used it for additional instructional coaches because we have a lot of novice teachers that started in the pandemic and wanted to support them. So each school got 2, and they were able to identify the needs of their school and then hire 2 positions that would meet that need.
Alrighty, so I will transition to our illustrious Mayor Gertz to do a presentation and discussion on proposed CCSD ACC youth support collaboration.
All right, thanks, Lawrence. And kind of everything we've been talking about thus far, really from the outset of the meeting, kind of dovetails into this. So, just thinking about kind of where we stand as commissioners, the mayor, we look community-wide and we think, all right, what are all of the health enhancing things that could happen in the community? What are all the things that might have some long-term benefit for the community? And, you've heard a little bit of talk about some of those. We know housing is a need. workforce development is a need, behavioral health is a need. But we absolutely realize that if we do a good job supporting young people outside the brick and mortar walls of the CCSD facilities, that we're going to get a better community, not just now, but in the long term. I'll share with you that just a week ago, I was with mayors from the other comparably sized communities across the state, Savannah, Columbus, Macon, and others. And every community, for example, is struggling with questions of community violence. And a big part of that discussion was, well, if we do the right things with our kids, we're going to mitigate that violence long term. So if we take care of today's 2-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 12-year-olds, that's going to mean 10 years from now that our community is a stronger and a safer place. So that's among the kind of things that, of course, we as people on that side of the public sector, local public sector, think about. And so thinking about what are all of the things that we could possibly pursue with $7 million of unified government ARPA money, we look to what we know to be true. We know that there are so many good people in this community, whether it's through sewing classes, in a music studio, on sports fields, in tutoring rooms, and so many other places, doing great work with our kids. Sometimes for free, sometimes with very little resources, sometimes without a lot of professional development support, sometimes without connecting to each other or connecting to y'all in the school district in a really consistent way. So among the things that in conversations with Dr. Thomas, with Lawrence, and with others, we've talked about is really wanting to have some high yield activities where we really generate benefits, measurable gains in these community needs around youth. Another thing we've talked about is really wanting to connect all these folks who are out there in the community with school staff. Because I can tell you from somebody who's been an administrator and a teacher in this district that I have always known that the kids who I saw in the hallways of the classrooms day in, day out had a lot of people supporting them in the community. But sometimes those connections weren't explicit. Those social connections between school staff and people out there on that football field or in that tutoring room were sort of disconnected. There just wasn't an ongoing way to interact with each other. And one of the things that we could do is we could build a way to do that. And that would be strong and that'd be beneficial for the kids. Another thing that we want to do is offer longer term benefits for the nonprofit folks, for the community-based folks who are working with kids. So for us as a unified government, we get community development dollars every year. And usually that sees the light of day in the community in $15,000 or $20,000 grants that might be 2 or 3 year grants. But we want to think, how do we extend beyond that? How do we think at least in 5-year tranches so that we're really connecting with kids in a long-term way? There's some really good research out there that suggests that if you want to make a difference with kids, you've got to develop a long-term relationship. It can't be a 3-month program in the summer and you have a great experience with some young people and then you wave goodbye at the end of the summer and say, have a good school year. It really has got to be ongoing. And in fact, some of that research was done at the behest of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters organization nationally. And they demonstrated you need at least an 18-month relationship with a young person to make the benefit of that meaningful. So we're wanting to think long range. And we're also wanting to make sure that those community-based folks know what each other are doing. Because oftentimes you have a young person who might be in that football program 1 year and in that sewing program another and in a music program another year. But those organizations aren't really interacting with each other in the same way that they're not consistently interacting with the school district. So what we would hope is that there could be ongoing professional development for those community-based folks. So they would know developmental needs of young people beyond maybe the narrow frame of that sewing class. And also know, here's what advanced behavioral health is doing with kids in the community. Or here are the other food resources, as well as how to connect with school staff and make that consistent. So from a very high level, what we want to be able to do is go to the community and say, all right, if we've got seven, let's just call it 7 million. Could be a little more than that if we have the collaborative opportunity with some CCSD dollars. But we want to go to the community and say, tell us what you know to be true out here in the community. Who's doing good work? And should there be a focus area or a set of focus areas? And as we've talked about so far, there are so many things. You know, Jamie did a good job just kind of highlighting how within the CCSD universe, there are some schools that have some particularly acute needs where CCSD is given some money. Should that continue to be true? Should we look at early childhood? Do we want to look at early adolescence? Are those teen years and movement toward workforce critical areas? Are there parts of the community where we want to put a geographic emphasis? Is that something that we want to think about? So we have to spend some time going to the community and I think talking amongst ourselves about what those focus areas will be. And when we decide what those would be, and we develop what some people would call a logic model, we then go to the community and say, all right, this is what we really want to spend our money on. You know, we want to spend it in this zone for this age band. Please apply. Should the organizations receive funding based on their application, we would then say, we want a long-term relationship with you. We want to build that dynamic where your organization and CCSD are talking all the time about this kid's needs, because we want to have that wraparound perspective on the young people. And what we would hope to do is we would hope to even imagine beyond the 5 years of American Rescue Plan Act dollars. So one of the people we brought into the last meeting was Sarah McKinney at the Athens Area Community Foundation to say, if we develop a really strong community collaborative model, would it be the kind of thing that we could then generate some outside dollars with and some private foundation dollars? So we're not just thinking about a great 5 years, but we're thinking about a great generation of support for our young people. So this on a very high level would be how it would go. And again, the first part, I think reflective of what we talked about earlier, would be going out to the community and saying, we want to hear you. We want to hear what's going on. And then we want to take that back and we want to develop a set of prospective programming based on listening to the community. So that's super high level. And again, I could sit here right now and want to get really prescriptive and say, I want to fund these 3 things because I know they're high yield and I know they're going on in the community. But there's probably a bunch of stuff that I don't know about. And so we want to do that listening before we jump ahead. But what I'll be asking the commission on the 15th is to say, let's earmark $7 million for this activity. So questions or thoughts?
So what does listening actually look like?
Mm-hmm.
And then how long does the listening process actually, like what's the turnaround? In your ideal world?
In my ideal world, it would look something like the late autumn program you did, where there's a live interactive opportunity to come to the table and to do some questioning and to get some responses. You know, obviously you want it to be substantive enough that you're touching as many people as possible, but not so long that you're in planning mode forever and that you're not moving close to active. So certainly my desire would be to move from inquiry to allocation in this calendar year.
Yeah, I'm just figuring out, because I think Jesse was getting at, well, how's the school district operate, you know, and you know, I mean, we've got Dr. Harris over there is doing a great job with collaborating, but he's not the budget person, and so that and I'm not suggesting a change here, but I'm just saying that kind of frustrates me, because you know, you're in a situation between you and Blaine and county commission where you don't have these buckets, and Lawrence is working on a lot of different programming and would certainly be cooperating with exactly what you're saying, and yet I don't think he's tied into the budget, and I don't even know who can answer that. but, and I know he's got a budget, but he's got a budget for staff.
You know, we approve programs to do that budget, and so I'm not sure what's missing on that part. Other than there's some other stuff out there that we don't have access to. But in terms of our school district, he has a budget.
No, he does have a budget. He has a budget for staff. He doesn't have a budget for community programming.
Where does,
Let's ask him.
So.
Good question, Karen.
Lawrence, could you speak to that?
I do have some funds that I've allotted towards community. That's how we ran the Family Fun Day.
Right.
So yeah, we do use funds for community engagement work. I guess I'm not really sure about the specifics of like what in my budget.
Well,
we're looking
so
for, but
how many million are you working with?
$1 million? None. Not $1 million. Not $1 million, Mr. Davis.
What about ARRA?
Well, we collaborate. So it's we as a executive cabinet in collaboration with our staff, we have looked to see how we can use those funds. So for us, we went down the route with a community school strategy. So working to bring our CSOs to our school communities and our community school directors. So the work they're doing at the ground level, and actually even they had a meeting today with the principals and are already seeing some impact in attendance. So our CSOs being on the ground in the neighborhoods, work with our neighborhood leaders, bringing in resources for those schools. So it's not necessarily being used for programming. My vision, at least in our division, and with the board support, was to look at capacity building and how do we support our schools on the ground level and bring those resources into our schools. So we have 7 CSOs, 6, and we'll have a 7th one. Our 7 CSOs are doing that work. So that's how I've used my budget in a way to kind of build those capacity, but it's not necessarily for, I guess, programs or events, and not millions, but
So Greg, like inherent in your question, I mean, is your question then of CCSD administration, how much unallocated ARPA money would you recommend contributing as a match?
And I'm trying to look at what the process is to even determine that. I mean, would it be that the superintendent would be involved right from the beginning, or would it be something that, because I think that y'all are already meeting with Lawrence on some of this stuff, right?
Yeah, we've had a couple of times.
And so it would be a matter of you approaching the superintendent and the CFO, and then eventually come up with a proposal for the school board.
I'm just gonna nod. I'm not sure how to answer that.
So with your team who you sort of got off the ground maybe 6 months ago, I'm kind of fuzzy on the dates, but those 6, now 7, who have been out in the schools and speaking with leadership and speaking with staff, what are they identifying as some of these concrete things like what we've been sort of talking about? Could you summarize what they have identified within their schools that we could maybe start using as an idea?
Yes, I can give.
Right now, where it's
So I can give you a start too. I will say they're in the midst of doing that comprehensive needs assessment. So most of them started in November, actually like the first week of November. So they've been in their schools, there were 7 weeks in the fall and then 3 weeks since we've been back, so about 10 weeks. Some of the things that came up even today, mental health. I think we talked a bit about that earlier today. Some of the things our youth are dealing with are some mental health challenges, things that are happening at home, attendance, access to transportation. But then I know our high school CSO broke it down. It's not even just access, it's just understanding how to use it. How routes work. So I know Mr. Jordan's at Cedar Shoals, how they talk to their kids about like, this is how you access the bus route and this is how you get to there. So even kind of the model of, I can give you a resource, but if I don't teach you how to use it, then you're less likely to use it. So attendance, mental health. One of our elementary CSOs talked a little bit about language services, which we've been working really hard on this year, to make sure families understand and can access content and material and resources and languages they understand. There's no gaps or barriers. Programs and activities. So from athletics, that came up, arts came up, facilities. So I think there was some conversation about community centers, like how do we have community centers that are accessible for K-8? And then it was further to talk about, well, what's available for teenagers after you age out of the Boys and Girls Club and the youth community centers, what's available for our teens in town. There's a reference to like some of the centers that exist in like the Atlanta area. where teenagers can gather and do college and career planning and meet with counselors and job coaches and stuff like that. So I think it's just, they're still in the midst of Davis collection, but these are just based off conversations on the ground, talking with students, talking with teachers, talking with neighbors in the community, knocking on doors. So I imagine once they're done at the end of February, we'll have a lot more data that we can marry it to. Because after that, the goal is to marry it to achievement, right? So we want to see if there are certain areas, could we marry that to their achievement level and see, well, we notice that an increase of people here saying this, is that their correlation to that to what we're seeing with literacy and some of our other statistics, and then we can kind of combine that resource. So it's a process. It's not, and you do data. It's not an overnight job, but it's a start.
If I could add to what Dr. Harris just mentioned, one of our most pervasive challenges in our district is attendance. And so we have qualitative data to support that, but we are getting a lot of quantitative data as we check in with principals and schools around students not attending daily and the impact that is having on our student achievement.
But attendance is the indicator, that's not the problem, right?
Correct.
We would need to figure out what the problem is that's resulting in the attendance issues and then address that rather than just trying to address attendance.
No, I'm in agreement with that. I mean, I think we address attendance in a lot of different ways, but I'm saying as we prioritize things that we need to find a solution for, attendance is at the top of that.
Hey, I have an observation and question. It sounds like we have two different organizations coming together and two different ARRA funds. We've had our discussions and I kind of am getting a grasp from where we're at. It sounds like you all still have a lot of information sharing and idea sharing to go there. So, but what I'd like to get out of tonight is how we can work together. And I've finally got a better grasp on what Kelly has presented here in creating this interface between what people are doing in the community and service providers and getting that over to the schools and everyone being able to share this information and us helping some of these nonprofits on the outside. Although it sounds like that what's the name of that program you were referring to before? Oh, Grant Plan. No, the one that the one where the RFP is coming out. The RFP.
Oh, yes, CCSD Connect.
And isn't that with community organizations?
Yeah.
Okay, so, that sounds, when I heard that, it was like, one thing I want to make sure is like we're working together on that and sort of symbiotically instead of conflict or sending out different messages. But back to Kelly here, what he presented, I'm trying to get my head around what would be involved in this collaboration. And I see, is there an electronic interface that would have to happen? Maybe it does. And also I would think that, you can have these great interfaces, but if you don't get buy-in from staff, candidates, counselors, people on all sides, that it will work. So you'd have to have professional development and from your top and an emphasis on that and pulling it together. But what else if we go along with some version of this plan, is that something you all want to do with us? And is there anything else that the school district would be doing? It seems like we could enhance how we could help the community if we all have these funds. But is there something I'm missing, Kelly, there in what you presented?
I don't think so. So certainly the CCSD has an electronic interface.
Yeah.
So we're talking about potentially joining with that, kind of creating one new entry point.
Does that have a name, the interface?
Yeah, it's their student information system.
Yeah,
it's Infinite Campus. And so it's a nationally used student information system. So that's a prospect, is to use that as a way that community orgs can feed in and say, hey, I saw Tremaine on Monday. He said that they lost their apartment and they're sleeping on grandma's porch. And so that way, community-based football coach gets that information to the school counselor. School counselor says, aha, this is something I need to do.
Now, the one thing on that from my years in education, Dr. Maddox over there, is there's like a new system that comes in and we're all going to share this information. And then the reality is that the teachers, barely do. And then once it gets presented, then we don't hear about it again. So that's where the follow through, I think is, I mean, if that's actually gonna work, there has to be real follow through, and teachers and counselors have to see a value in that, and students and families. So, am I right?
What I'm hearing is, basically, where's the money? CCSD. Like,
Yeah.
What
That's
is
your-
our, and that will require, greater, discussion, with us and from our, superintendent. How much are we willing to commit to this process? At the end of the day, that's what I'm hearing. And I think that's a discussion that's gonna, should be had, and then, because we're not prepared to deliver that tonight.
And
$1.5 million, that's just not, compared to what the city is committed to bringing to the table for our youth is.
I think conceptually, just to hear board members say, we want to see community-based organizations supported, and we want to see direct engagement between CCSD and community organizations.
Yeah.
And we want those community organizations to have the kind of coaching, training, and professional support that will make them their very best.
Thank you, that's it.
And which kind of
And
organization?
so, I was gonna say, it's so interesting, I'm sitting here about to jump on my skin, because I've been approaching this problem from the community side, right? I've been called in by some community members to address this issue from the people who are most impacted by it. And so they've come up with a similar structure, it's just, I just flip it, right? Where the ground up, they have youth serving organizations who want to be in school, who want facilities open in this county so that they can run programming here. And so that costs money, we understand that, but that's the whole focus of the CYDO, is to get all of these facilities open, to understand what are the programs that are on the table to actually be there. So we want to know where the capacity is for initiating a program or implementing a program. We want to know, again, how are these programs, how are the programs performing, not from the perspective of the school system, right? But from the perspective of the parents and the children that are in it, so that that can be a marriage of those two things. And we would definitely be working with, and we've had these conversations with Dr. Thomas and some other people, so we came up with a palette that we're trying to work toward. But the idea is exactly what you're describing. And so when we talk about what can we find out that's different or new, I think the two pieces that I see missing are the technology for one piece. So we've got to have this database of at least what the youth serving organizations are. And so please don't take our idea and run with it, because these guys have been working a long time on it. But it's kind of like an Angie's List of the youth serving nonprofits, and that's what we're working on. We're also working to, again, work with the housing authority to get their facilities open, because the parents in these communities are saying there's no support for our children once they drop them off the bus, right? And so we need to be able to have the people leading this, by the way, are people that grew up in public housing in Athens, Clarke County. Most of them are absolutely adamant that the opportunity to go to a community center was critical to their success. And so they're calling on those same people now who were a part of that legacy in building those organizations. These are the people that came together to come up with how, from the community ground up, we can go. So yes, there are some opportunities for collaboration, because the school system can't do some of the things that need to be done, whereas the county could possibly do those things.
So I see 4 or 5 hands up. My name's Emily Bones, and I am your facilitator. I've done a great job thus far, but I'm going to insert myself here. I work at the district. I'm the strategic projects director, and I'm excited to be with you all this evening. I had 8, but raise your hand if you're thinking and ready to be here until 8:30. Okay, we may split the difference, maybe look at an 8:15, but we probably are going to go a little bit past 8, and I think that's okay. So we have a question, and then we have a process. Everybody's going to share. We're going to walk out of here with an action plan, Ms. Gallagher, and I know that all of you have plenty to say and to write down. So we're going to have you write. We're going to collect everything that is written down, and then we'll give you a chance to talk. So the other thing that's going to happen is you are going to be invited to move. Because I was given 3 topics of interest or priority or things that everybody should have plenty to talk about. The 3 topics are literacy, equity, and violence prevention. And the question is, what are the policies, programs, and people, opportunity necessary to improve the conditions for youth in these 3 priority areas? But this evening, you're going to focus on the one that is the most interest to you or your second most interest, depending on where folks sort out. So I'm looking for 5 or 6 people at a table, and I'm looking for a good mix of CCSD and ACC.
I want to go with equity.
Okay,
So
I am going to put these on the table. I will go ahead and put equity here because you said it. Violence prevention is going here, but you can move. You can move. Once you get to your new space, go ahead and say hello to your partner, your table mates, and start again. No, you're gonna get to talk one topic tonight.
Oh, one
So
topic.
pick the topic you like the most.
Violence.
Well, equity is probably still problem.
Board member for violence. Who wants to be violent?
You like mental health? Yeah.
I guess I need to see on the person like with, wow, I can see.
I think,
All right, you all have.
Yeah, I'm coming, Greg.
Pretty good job of sorting yourselves out. So this is your topic for this evening. I was told you all love to be facilitated.
Well, not now.
It's my information wrong. All right, here's what the first step is.
You have a I've been trying to set up to that for a year.
That's right.
no, I agree with you on
Everybody's gonna
that,
get some of
but I
these.
also think there's ways to.
Here we go. Pick
Or at
some.
least, you know.
Oh, thank you.
This first part is.
What am I even?
I am about to tell you, okay, literacy table, everybody report. Violence prevention table, you guys are excellent, equity, you're doing great. All right, here we go. This first part is silent. These are all of your awesome ideas based on your experience and your expertise, what you hear from your constituents. What are the policies, programs, and people necessary to improve the conditions for youth within your particular topic area? These are your ideas. One idea per sticky. I encourage you to use a marker, but if you would like to use a pen, you may, but there should be markers for everybody. One idea per half sheet of sticky. It's now going to be quiet because you are going to write all your ideas.
Oh, yeah, we can, yeah, bring more work.
One idea. Great question. You could have 5 policies if you love policies. You could have 5 programs. You could have one of each, however you would like to do it.
Tear your sheet in half.
No, it's fine like this.
We got this.
Individually.
So each sheet should have a policy, a program.
Nope, each sheet should have one idea. Could be a policy, could be a program, could be a person.
Oh.
And then you'll move to another sheet. You could have 5 or 10 sheets here in this 5 minutes. We've got lots of ideas.
Or if you know a lot of people.
You know a lot of people.
I mean, I know it's not.
It shouldn't be an essay, but it should be clear enough for people to read and understand. Let me see.
That works.
Let's see.
I don't know.
I'll tell you.
Oh, no, well, it's, you know, it's just me understanding the difference between the two things that I was discussing before, like.
This is something that you think is necessary. So it could be a change in policy, it could be a new policy, it could be something that we're all committed to. It could be a way by which we do business, by which, anything. It doesn't have to be something that is going to happen tomorrow. These are your dreams, your hopes and your wishes, what you know to be true, what you know to be necessary. One idea per page. Again, it doesn't need to be an essay, but it needs to be specific enough that people can understand it.
Oh, I'm feeling good now.
All right, you have about 90 more seconds to get all of that good information in your head out onto these. I encourage you to be specific. What exactly is needed? Where is that opportunity? We're not going to give any grades. You can have 3, 10, however many you've got. If you need more paper, we can get you more paper. You need more paper? You got more.
Ink will be extra color.
Ink is ran out of.
The color selections are Dr. It's piggy green.
They want to keep your.
There's where you got it.
Yes. All right, we're going to go ahead and give the next instruction. So now, as a group within your topic area, everybody is going to get a chance to share what they wrote down. Well, we'll go ahead and do it like this. Mr. Hamby could start with his favorite idea or the first one he thought of. He will share it. If somebody had one that was similar or that seemed connected, they could say, I also had that, it seems connected here, it seems related, they could talk about it, they could ask some questions, and then we would move around so that everybody gets to share an idea, and then we'll start back around, all right? I've set aside about 20 minutes for this sharing. The goal here is for each group to have their 3 very favorite. Their 3 very favorite come out of their group that they will be able to tell us all about. We aren't losing these pieces of paper. Right? We will keep them, we will type them up, we will share them. But I want to hear the 3 very favorite from your table that you are identifying. So about 20 minutes. Could be policy program people, it could be one of each, however it shakes out. We're good?
Okay.
All right, go for it.
If we have like a theme that's ongoing, is that okay?
Oh, yeah, you can talk.
Really
Right,
tight.
whatever the theme is,
Okay.
and just stack them.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever theme is. Okay. Okay. Yep, go ahead.
Does anyone have anything last?
Front porch.
Yeah, so you don't need to listen, like, just so everybody can see how that.
Oh, yeah, no, it's take a picture.
So, kind of just making it clear, you guys got anything to match?
Yeah.
Like, just to match? More about access to local space. Maybe.
I'm gonna start another one and just see what happens. I started out with a community excited school, religious leaders, community leaders. So.
I work for a living.
Okay. I'll put, you can look at the door, so then I come back.
Another thing about them, never know what they got. Business association. You, I remember there was a youth thing about, he found a gun while he was going around the camp. I don't know where that was. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have something you can read.
So there's the spring level gang outreach program in Multnomah County that I'm always on about. There's a similar one in Athens and Marion Park is always on about. It's got a snapping. Anyway, it's an example of a yeah, we've actually made it through locating where the violence I have a feeling that, I know there's a corner in Atlanta.
That hasn't evolved, but that's just representation.
I mean, you're like creative.
I know, this might be, I did, family and community support, but then I kind of broke it down.
Mine mostly has something to do with money, so I'm gonna just do mine, and, I think that, so I've been to DC a few times, and I know that they have, in their districts, they all have budgets, and with their budgets, they choose to do very specific, equitable things with the funding, so that,
A lot of people don't realize how many young people.
but I'm gonna want a pot of money to address like the very specific issues, like street lights. That should be a county thing, like we should have that anyway. But like if, like in my district, and two, we don't have a grocery store, we don't have a fire station, we don't have a bank, we don't have anything except for a jail and an airport. So you can get in or out. So if there was funding to spend on things that actually
Now,
made
the communication of that.
these people who
Yeah, I know about that.
Yeah, I like that, and actually that, I like the, we hit it there.
you make it Myers
One thing I think will be helpful.
Okay. So there's my money.
Is they're asking us to do a specific program, policy, or people, like trying to hone in on these clusters, like what are we asking for? Like, are we asking for a partnership between ACC and CCSD to set up a new program that does this? Policy change, affect the way people end up losing contact with someone, looking to hire a new person in an existing program.
In some cases, it's too easy. I don't know if we have that next place. But yeah, so like this district that always runs.
I didn't have anything. Any of my.
Any child that was suspended, instead of stay home, they could set up you know, and they could come there and.
Lifelong learning professional workforce.
All the policies and all the bureaucracy and stuff, always got me in it and taking with all the literacy.
So, doesn't require people to go
Okay, so not yours, that's an example, so I'm just thinking in general. Okay, so, way too often, I get in these spaces and people say opportunity.
I did.
But that's really an opportunity. What is an opportunity? Obviously, it's not really, but how is an opportunity to impact? I can have, everyone qualifies for the opportunities while they, but they won't be I actually do something about it.
That's what I found, like, they all go in there, right?
Yeah, and that's why it's fun. And I wasn't kind of sure like, I'm sure everyone in here will say, I'm not going to but nobody will offer for myself.
Well, I would say that my thing is like us, like, you gotta go down sex, that's what I'm saying.
And
Okay. We can move them around.
I do think what you put in your next is here. I do think understanding where they're going to do this exercise is kind of clear. I think they want us to provide 20 minutes, which is probably going to be unrealistic, and that's some specific thing. A program or a policy or a person in a position. We're or what policy decisions in one or both of our institutions are necessary to make the work possible. So I just think like trying to get at the need of like I don't think I had these alternative response teams, which we budgeted with ARRA money in our last budget. Partnership with behavioral. That could be a place you could look at expanding. Right now, the stuff is supporting engagement. We're out so we can actually get positions filled.
So you can get to an alternative to education before you can.
And then the other one is outstanding education program.
Remember your top three.
Program RCP is already doing.
Top three.
They need buy-in from the government.
I know, sorry.
Oh, okay,
Getting kids to work is a vision, but I think if we know that they I'm not saying it's $1 million, but maybe give them the budget and say, hey, we have enough, you give, what is it? Give it to people, what is it that you, even if it starts off with something yeah, but it gives them a chance to build their own budget versus us.
And let me say what I do think is always a hindrance is, I love the idea, but what we always run into, and I don't know if we ever run into it.
And this is a very broad one here.
Policy, because the money and the work really does need to go.
Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories.
Because the policy, so we need to look at our policy to see what we can change.
We could, like, we could say, you know what, and we're going
All right, 30 seconds to come up with your favorites. 3 favorites.
Like right now, like right now.
I don't know, I think it was true that I feel like a little different than that one. Because it's all about the organizing and facilities and I don't know.
But our perspectives are different, so as commissioner, but as, and I'm thinking as a school board member.
Yeah.
Absolutely impact.
don't have your balance.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so they games they don't have it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, if we have and that, I would like to, stuff we learned about the different schools. They didn't have the middle school. All right, here's where we're headed. We are going to, you'll see back here, we have put up some action plans, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months.
Oh.
So at the top of each of the plan is going to go your 1 to 3 ideas. So 1 per flip chart. So if you need a separate Post-it note to write your idea, so you can put it at the top of that yellow sheet of paper. And then everybody with a pen or a pencil can walk around and write what they believe would be the action steps necessary to get started on that particular impact, working on the policy, the program. We're going to share our ideas.
Yeah, we could rearrange our. I don't know if the other groups are aware of that, but there's been a lot of talking, a lot of directions here, and we haven't even identified.
You don't have one? Do you have one? Do you guys have one?
Yeah, we have
one. Do you have one, Karina? Do you have at least one?
We have 3 categories.
We can start with this.
What resources need to go
But
in
we
that
don't have,
area?
this is very.
Those areas.
Well, what's the, is there a program that you want, is that like a program of GIS?
Community centers.
Athletic
program.
Well, they're all related.
So that's a good first place.
I mean, I guess I agree, we should target where we're
All right, Ms.
going.
Gallagher,
But
your
that's
team.
more a question
Yes.
of how do we go about
You guys can go
implementing
ahead
a
and take
program,
your 3
or
and
where
put
do
on
we
the
put
top
them?
page. We're gonna ask you to talk about it, but.
That's not a program in and of itself.
So what we did was summarize our categories, and then we got a lot of ideas.
Sure.
Where is the
So do you
balance?
wanna just maybe write on the piece of paper, the, maybe the like.
I mean, can anybody,
or what it is.
it looks like it's heading your direction now, Jesse.
I mean,
From the
Okay, wait, so the ones that have.
The east side, it has definitely
What are we
moved.
writing?
Yeah.
So these were more like involved, so self-employment.
You just put that at the very top and then people write, okay.
So under involvement, if this were a category, there's self-employment opportunities, so mediation. Mediation.
So y'all are saying
spending
everything you put on the
services
table,
for
the one thing that we're gonna follow through on is another study on where we should target our programming. I mean,
Okay. And then for communication and outreach, we have, diversity and instructional materials, helping kids understand Athens history,
so I'll reiterate my question then,
and
what is the
instructional
program,
materials.
policy, or position
Helping
that
kids
we
understand
want to
Athens
fund?
history and African
We
American.
need to bolster the violence prevention
That's
activity.
kind of what we talked about the other night.
No, all is, so what in those places, let's pick Stonehenge, we're talking about shootings in Stonehenge, what are we putting money in Stonehenge? Are we just dropping off cash in the middle of Stonehenge, or are we like, what are we investing in?
Well, here's what I would say. Number one, we look at in terms of understand.
Come on over, once you have it, come on over and put it at the top of one of these yellow sticks.
Under that one, we also have praise and recognition. Yes, yes, that was me.
We're the stewards of the land. And so we should be saying, hey, Stonehenge, what did you need?
Praise and recognition. and information.
I think it's
Praise and recognition. No, same thing.
If my child had this open house,
Alright. Everybody can stand up and make their way this way.
I don't know, that's.
Lifelong learning.
Assuming that's fruitless attempt to say she and mom are actually going to talk to each other. And we're actually institutions to follow through. I still don't know if we're asking them to follow through on. That's the post-it note. That's all I'm getting at. Like, is it a participatory budget program? Is it a?
Okay, and then, I don't know what the name is.
Meetings in certain places, and then ask them where to put money. Are we, you know, what are we actually talking to do? Because what y'all are talking about, we want community participation in defining what a program looks like, or where it's targeting these programs. Sure.
What are some potential programs that we can put in this area that I inspire? You got some.
I think there's like 5 of them, I'm not attached to any of them more than the others. You know, I'm not saying that it has to be any of these, I'm just saying, I think we should be advocating for one or more specific things to do. And then we can make sure to be clear on how we want to do
How we calculate GPA or what did you say, what we allocate?
I just put practice.
All right, Mr. Davis, let's see what y'all
I like how we recognize praise.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's like frustrating about this. That should be how we
I don't know which one is broad enough, but. Which one is those? I'm not saying.
You are totally correct. I guess you don't comprehensive.
That's good. I need to.
That action item is take a deep breath and do a better job of engaging. Take a deep breath and do a better job of consolidating data. I'm comfortable with that. That's not what I see on that. I see on when are we actually going to talk about it? Or maybe a better question is who's going to talk about it? Because it doesn't sound like we are. That's disappointing.
So I would need to go buy a bike. It was like $7. Is it like the ones I'm seeing on like YouTube when I'm playing music?
Right, so you guys can come out to take your pen and write the actions.
You don't need to get in your chair when you go running. Like you run and you're like.
And then I said, well, her discussion. The
Yeah, right, the broad.
It's just like, it's what I'm saying, it's like, if I go back to live and then go like this stuff.
I love it, I miss.
Oh.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead.
So are you okay with me just adding that
Will expand,
It's hard to use
I don't think there's
So that would be all this, like, I guess CCSD, ACC, the library system, and then Athens transit.
all of the above.
That's true.
All right, my goal for you all is to have at least one action step for every single one of these. So we need
And give another reason, I think this is the bus is cold. What about 6 months?
Right on anybody, everyone needs to have an action step. Oh yeah, other people can write on our, yeah, you can write on it. They can write on yours. Our goal is to get one action step on every single flip chart.
Wait, they got a knowledge
We know it's there. She must have done those type of people.
Oh, that's my favorite. It sounds like that's sort of word there.
He's a good, very early age. Anytime, talk or anything.
I thought this problem was an ad,
I mean, when are we gonna actually talk about this? When are we gonna talk about what the fun What questions can we ask? I mean, it was the most amorphous waste of time. I think we start.
Oh, no, she did. Oh, she must have done
I'll tell you, it was really good. I don't everyone else on the table there was at least 8 more. Yeah, like that stuff up there was less. I mean, really, like, yeah, I just.
Then you have to fill it out on grade score.
Where I worked for a couple of years, we had and everybody brought something that was baked. Yeah.
But I don't know.
It would take like 2 or 3 of us.
And it was time and energy and attention to all the things. I would love us to do these.
We were just talking about housing. We were talking about some of the communities.
I think I'd lean in more of the
Pickleball is basketball.
It's a slightly different demographic.
Come on.
They got it. You got one.
Convince me this hasn't been a total waste of time.
Community oriented programs in that community was I look at the guy.
So there you go.
He's there.
So what I can tell
3 more years.
from our commitment and all the work and brainstorming we've done today and continue to do.
He was there, he came right out.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We are gonna take what we have here, we will type it up so that you have your idea with all the action steps. For the paper that is at your table, it would be great if somebody could stack it up so that we can also capture the ideas that didn't make it into the top 3, but that we can still have those. So those are the immediate action steps to wrap up this particular discussion. Tell me, I'm looking for 2 to 3 action steps that you would like to see happen next. What needs to happen next? 2 to 3, and share what they needs to be discussed, what needs to happen, how can we take this?
Well, I have a nice easy action step.
Yeah.
And I already have a little conversation here with Lawrence, I'm gonna be chairing the site selection for the library. Everyone here is like into a certain idea about it being walkable, so I think we can do the next step in figuring out how we can get that done in the next 3 months.
Okay. So one of mine, my favorite one, would be for Athens Clarke County government to make Grand Slam its own budget item and come from under leisure services so that it can continuously have its own funding and better serve students, because it was founded to reduce gang violence and it was working until it was defunded. and now it's sub-funded. So it needs its own budget line.
And on my action plan for the same category is to reach out to Athens Housing Authority and Athens Leisure Services. In the past, Athens Housing Authority supplied the building, but the workers were paid by Leisure Services. And you remember Miss Jetty and Sarah and all those folks. So we need to build up. And the other thing was to reach out to at least 5 to 10 youth groups that are already functioning. They just need to be in place to be housed.
Okay. Those are some immediate action items that we can make sure we capture, and we can get you these notes. Obviously, I don't think we can solve all of the issues in 45 minutes, but I appreciate all of you taking the time to think through this.
We
so that
had a
can
couple of
get started.
easy
Did you
ones.
start? You have some easy
We have a couple,
wins here?
I think we have some easy ones. So one of our goals was greater access for all children to books. And a couple of easy things here. We have little free libraries all over this community, but usually they're only in communities that have already pretty good access to books. Neighborhoods that need to have some help there don't have those. So we're talking about putting little free libraries at all CCSD schools, and then also putting them at parks and making sure that they're accessible to high need communities. Pretty easy thing, the little tiny boxes. You can make one in an afternoon. And we felt like we can be working with CCSD, ACC, neighborhood leaders, CCSOs, and then the Athens area library system. We have books already readily available too. So very easy thing to do. And the next one, which Mumby already gave a fantastic phrase, easy marketing, called Books on the Bus.
Yeah, I like that.
Is which we create tiny little free libraries, just a few shelves on every Athens Transit bus. So they're basically traveling little free libraries that go through the entire community. Again, super easy. You can just buy the things and set them up there. I'm sure we can again work with the same entities to be able to provide the books. And we have the books plugged in there, and you're immediately increasing access to books across the entire county.
Cool.
So we have a tough one, equity over here, and I'm not the spokesperson, but.
There you are now.
Stepping forward. So we have a concern with equity and achievement policies. So there's a disparity in course offerings at different schools. And so we've already, I know, addressed this in our strategic plan in terms of how we, the curriculum, I guess, if you would, for certain places. But we do need a policy review of our course offerings so that the work that we're trying to do is actually documented and pretty much governed by the policy. So we thought that's something that would be a short and easy thing to do, to see we're doing something in our policies that prevent this equity issue of inclusiveness and making sure that our curriculum and our materials reflect our reality of who we are. We support your Eastside Library, but another thing in our 3-month time frame was a policy review for the gifted remediation kind of classes that we have. We have great recognition for kids that are in the gifted program. They have a lot of flexibility in how they can do and learn differently and employ different things. We don't know if we have that across the board for our middle, right? We know that we do a lot on the far end and on the low end and on the high end, but for the kids in the middle, what are we doing to really make sure that they are getting exposed to this whole concept of equity and inclusion? So this sounds almost like a curriculum review coming up now that the word comes to us, right? So I'll stop there and let someone else share more.
So, and actually, I'm going to go ahead and say that these are all great. We're going to take the notes, I promise, read the notes, add to the notes if you've got additional action items. I know Dr. Harris and the mayor are continuing to work together on this. Is this correct? Yes? No? Yes? Okay. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm just sitting here, and I guess I would feel remiss to not share this as we're concluding. I arrived here thinking that we would be talking about ARPA money. And I think there's a lot of great ideas here. I don't want to talk bad on any of these ideas. But it's not clear to me how we have done anything to hone in on what we're going to do about $100 million between our two very large and very influential institutions. So I really hope that we have another meeting very soon where we can zero in on the question of what are we doing with our ARPA money and who is going to carry forward whatever decision we make in that meeting. Because those two things are totally unclear to me today. They've been totally unclear at every meeting we've had. We have a transformative large sum of money that we keep kicking the can on so that we can do this kind of stuff. And it feels participatory, I suppose, for us, but like, you know, we have the majority of 2 elected bodies in the room for hours, multiple times a year, and we still have not done that. We need to do that. So I really appreciate everybody's time. I don't want to be negative on what I think has been a good conversation to connect around things that are important, but I don't feel like today matched my expectation of what it was going to be about. And I feel like we are failing our community to not make a decision on this $100 million. So thank you for your time.
Well, and at least as a piece of that, 2 weeks from tomorrow, Commission has the opportunity to say, we're going to designate some money for youth development definitively, and then sort of take that next step to say, all right, what is that? And that's the earlier question, Karina. What does that first wave of community outreach look like?
And Kelly, if I may say that, I mean, I do hear the take home for us as a body is to talk more about what amount are we willing to commit. So that's one. But then also, I don't want this, to be centered around us. And so I do have expectations of action items, but we have communities that have been making decisions, bodies that have been making decisions for communities for years. And so what I see as the most important thing is, of course, our body determining the amount that we're going to commit, but then also deferring to communities. And I think these are all great ideas, but even if we would have come out with an action plan, that's limited. That's limited. It's us, once again, in a room saying, I'm going to put in a mental health counselor. I've said that many times. That's Lakeisha's idea. But what I need to do is go over to Paul and say, hey, what is it you need? And so I know it's not an either or, but I just don't want us to get so discouraged because we are one part of the community. And chances are a lot of our lived experiences are very different when we talk about where violence is at this point and where literacy gaps are and equity. And so I do think we need some concrete action steps, but I don't want us to forget that we are stewards of the money. So we do need to decide how much we're going to spend. And that action needs to be led by people who are experiencing these outcomes. Honestly, not by us. We're stewards. We're part of that. We're part of that conversation.
I do believe that ACC is much farther ahead in that planning and decision-making than the Board of Education is, though.
I would agree with that. I agree, but here's my issue. I think they are, and I think we need to take some steps forward. But what we can't keep doing is making decisions for communities. And that is a part of what this is. And so I'm not saying that I think these meetings are wonderful. And I do think there's some low-hanging fruit that already exists. We're talking about Grand Slam. We're talking about some of the things that already exist. But my God, there's a reason that we still have the same educational outcomes that we have. There's a reason that the same people are poor, that were poor 30 years ago. I said in our group, we've had Partners for a Prosperous Athens. We've had One Athens. We've had Whatever It Takes. We have our body meeting. And so I just don't want us to lose the voices of people who can't make it here and think that we have to come up with an action plan. It's a great start. I'm not saying that, but I don't want us to lose those voices.
And I don't know if my understanding, Alan Blaine, correct me if I'm wrong, but the process that we're hopefully voting on in 2 weeks is doing that first part in which we're going to say how much money we're going to put into those buckets towards those things. Then the next step is to hire, put an RFP for a facilitator, in which that facilitator is going to meet with all the community partners to actually come up. We're not going to be voting on any kind of actions at all. Right. Exactly for the reason that you're talking about. We shouldn't be. But we're going to hire a facilitator to go around to all those community groups, bring them together to the table, listen to them, develop with them the action items, and they're going to bring that back to us so we can create an RFP to send it out for them to have the RFP. And I don't think that whole process was really rolled out, explained very well. So that's what we're doing, we're completely on the same page with you. But the first step that we have to do is figure out how much money we're working with.
Yeah, that's it.
And I think what's unclear to us is whether the money we're talking about can actually be combined with money that y'all have, so that, you know, we can support some of what y'all are doing and you know, meaningfully collaborate.
And we have that timeline, right? And what's the timeline again, that the money has to be allocated by?
24.
Like end of 2024. Like actually,
3 years.
yeah, allocate. So like the idea is like, right, we're talking, do all these things the right way. It's a process. I mean, it's like a year just for probably get the RFPs ready and then something like that, and then actually start doing the funding. So we're on a timeline. So that's one of the things I think we're trying to do that now, so that we can actually we have the time to do the process right.
And I would reiterate that every time this is talked about, and it's like CCD, Athens, Clark County, all of us have been going, and all those other people in the community. Like that's been just what you're saying has been a repeated concern that has come up again and again. So.
One thing is an action item, since you all are already, getting ready to have the facilitator to do these studies, you know, I would hate for us to come back and then say, okay, now we need to do more studies.
Right.
You know, so how do we, as an action item tonight, or maybe tomorrow, but you really know, and superintendent, you know, how do we come together and decide, okay, in a few weeks, we're gonna be voting on this in terms of facilitators. We need a subcommittee from your school district, from your school board, from your CSOs, whoever that represents the district, to be a part of this process with the facilitators, so that we are all on the same page. Because we're not on the same page, and then, you know, that's, you know, we're just spinning in circles again. But I would like, and I hope that CCSD, we will come together and determine how much money we are willing to put in for this, because we have to have a commitment in terms of how much money, while we're doing all this facilitating and talking, we gotta show some money also.
And how much money you want from us. I mean, it can go, you know, it's a two-way thing, like ask us too, like what specifically do you want us to invest in that you're working on?
It really feels backwards, right? How much money can you put in? If we have a problem to solve, shouldn't we first find out what does it cost to solve the problem? And then worry about finding the money? Because I think there's a huge infusion of money coming down. You obviously know more than I do. But there's a huge infusion of money coming into the community, right? It's a one-time deal, right? We don't expect to see this happen again for another 30, 40 years. So this is the time when I think we're looking at what is the problem that we really need to solve, and let's make sure that we're all on the same page and getting it solved. And it could be we don't spread it out that thinly, but we actually attack the problem that is the root of all of the evils that we're dealing with.
I think we should just put in 25 million each and then go ahead and start addressing problems, because the same problems have been going on for a long time. And we keep on meeting and talk about the same stuff over and over again. We're gonna go back to the community and get more feedback. We got studies on top of studies. The county got 20 years and then another 20-year study on what's wrong in the county. The Clark County School District does culture and climate, so we know what these children are feeling like when they're in the building. So we can just use our brains and just assume what's going on in the community and how that impacts them when they get to school. Like, can we just spend some money and start doing some work? Like, pay people to do the work, and let's fix Athens, because I'm tired of meetings. I'm so tired of meetings.
And with that, I will say it's 8:30 and we appreciate it.
Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Thanks, bud.